Hello everyone, welcome back to our special coverage of the war. It's the middle of the 9th week since Israel was attacked by Hamas, and fighting is intensifying inside Gaza. I-24 News defense correspondent Jonathan Regev has the latest.
Fighting is raging all across the Gaza Strip as Hamas strongholds are being targeted one after the other. One of those is Jabalia, just to the north of Gaza City. It is a very densely populated area where terrorists can pop up from a tunnel shaft practically anywhere. IDF forces, striking from the ground and from the air, have now encircled Jabalia, one of the last standing strongholds in the northern Gaza Strip, and are now carrying out the dangerous mission of clearing this area of terrorists to further establish Israeli control here.
There should be no stopping. Keep on pushing forward until victory here, and you should know that the next missions are already planned.
This is the next mission. Khan Yunis is the biggest city in the southern Gaza Strip. This is the birthplace of Yahya Sinwar and Muhammad Def, the political and military leaders of Hamas in Gaza. This is also the place Israel believes many of the hostages are being held. There's been no ground incursion here yet, but the very heavy artillery and airstrikes suggest that it is coming.
We pursued them in northern Gaza. We're now pursuing Hamas in southern Gaza too. We will operate in maximum force against Hamas terrorists and infrastructures while minimizing harm to the civilian that Hamas places around them as shields.
It will be a difficult challenge as the vast majority of the Gaza Strip population, more than 2 million people, is concentrated in this area. While Israel is trying to protect them, Hamas has no problem, or maybe even an interest, in sacrificing them all.
More rockets were fired at Israel today. I-24 News' Guy Azriel is in the southern city of Sderot with the latest from there, Guy.
Jacob, there has been quite a lot of activity in the southern part of Israel this afternoon. There's been a lull in the past 3 hours, but earlier today we were in the city of Ashkelon where there was a direct hit into a building there. Luckily, the mother who was in the apartment with her 2 children has managed to lock themselves up in the shelter, miraculously surviving a direct rocket hit into that apartment building. 2 other women were lightly injured from shrapnel, and several other Israelis were treated for anxiety. We've seen ongoing rocket fire throughout the day, both here, of course, in the southern border as in the northern border, which you will discuss later in the show. This goes together with the ongoing IDF operation that we heard about from Jonathan Regev earlier, the IDF deepening its fight in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. The IDF spokesman Herzi Halevi publishing a statement just a short while ago, and we are hearing of rocket alerts in the city of Ashdod, and we are certainly hearing the explosions in the air. This could be the interceptions, quite a lot. I'm not sure if you can hear those explosions in the air. Quite a lot of them could be the interceptions of the Iron Dome rocket alert system.
Right, Guy, maybe it's a good time for you to.
Right now in the air.
Yeah, maybe it's a good time for you to find a shelter because there's a barrage of rockets right now all over southern Israel, up to the city of Ashkelon and elsewhere. So if you feel safe, you can keep reporting from there. If not, catch some place, and we'll get back to you later. With me here in the studio is Shiri Fein-Grossman, former head of Foreign Affairs at the Israel National Security Council. Thank you very much for coming. So we see more fighting in Gaza. We see more rockets as we speak. What's the projection?
Well, the assumption is they're firing as many rockets as they can, as long as they can. There's massive attacks of the Air Force in recent days to try, before the infantry and the tanks come in. Right now, I mean, we're seeing the IDF advance. We see very harsh fighting. We have some IDF casualties. The projection is, I believe the Hamas is in a strategic point that is not comfortable for him. What happened on Friday when there was a pause, but it didn't continue in spite that he wanted to continue it, and the IDF resumed its fighting, and Secretary Blinken said it's Hamas's fault. He violated the ceasefire, he violated the terms of the deal. That gave a lot of legitimacy to the IDF, and it broke kind of this conception with Sinjar and Hamas and others that Israel won't continue the fighting after the humanitarian pause, and that it will stop fighting because there are more hostages. There is a very difficult situation with the hostages. I mean, testimonies are coming out of what they suffered, and I'm sure we'll speak about it in the next hour. And there's a lot of pressure on the government to pause the fighting, but it doesn't seem like we're going.
Right. There was a meeting today between the families of hostages and the Israeli Prime Minister that did not go very well.
Yeah, harsh, tough meeting. Reportedly with some, yelling and maybe some physical expressions as well. It's a very difficult task. I think the government of Israel is basically saying we're determined to keep on the fighting until Hamas raises his hand and raises his white flag in the air and comes to the negotiation table with a much better deal, a broader deal, not just 10 hostages every day. We've seen he has command and control of the territory. He was very, very, put on a very good show. A report coming out today from the Ministry of Health of Israel that it drugged the hostages before they released them, just to make them calm and happy. As we saw, some of the pictures were unbelievable. And so, you've shown that strength you have in command and control. Okay, so please release all the hostages right now, or we'll continue. That's what the government is trying to do. I hear some reports that the Qatar is saying it might resume negotiations. I'm sure there's negotiations that are taking place hidden for the public, but now that it's coming out to the public, it may be a sign of the Hamas maybe breaking down. Although I have to say, Salah Harouri, he's Hamas senior in Lebanon, he said a few days ago, we'll continue fighting. It's very easy for him to say it when he's not in Gaza. There's a real crack that we're seeing starting to widen between the population in Gaza, that it's starving, and Hamas. Hamas controlling the supplies, the humanitarian supplies that are coming in, giving to its forces first. It makes a lot of controversy. We even saw fighting going on between people that are trying to take from the humanitarian aid from the trucks and Hamas's operatives. And that is the kind of example that I hope we see. I don't want people to see starving, but I want to see the people in Gaza turning their back to Hamas and saying, stop this now. And we're seeing some voices like that.
Yeah, but usually they cannot pressure the Hamas, really. The IDF chief of staff has just said that Hamas was maybe surprised or did not think that the IDF would continue its maneuvering on the ground, and maybe Hamas was caught unprepared, would you say?
I don't think it was. I think we did take it by surprise. Like I said before, there's a conception that somehow they'll just continue the pauses. They'll give hostages as the list they want. I was in a conference today in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about gender-based violence and what the sexual crimes against humanity perpetrated by Hamas, and what we were presented, Forum Dvorah members and ambassadors from all over the world that represented more than 100 ambassadors, packed auditorium, is that research shows when you have sexual crimes that are part of the attack, it's not likely. I mean, usually the fighters don't want to release the female hostages, so they won't tell what went on in captivity, exactly like the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for
the
State Department said last night in its briefing, and it's heartbreaking. And so Israel is insisting to get those women back, as was agreed upon in the initial list. And Hamas just thought he can play with us. He played with all the terms and conditions. He was supposed to release the hostages at 4, and we saw them only, at the middle of the night were released. So basically, every term that we had with him, he broke. And IDF, government of Israel, is saying enough is enough. Now we're leading this, and I think they're doing the right thing. Although it's very hard. It's heartbreaking. We know the hostages are at risk from what's going on, and it's just an impossible decision by the government.
Right. Thank you. Well, we'll get back to you later on other issues. Moving on, Israel has a plan to flood Hamas tunnels with water pumped from the Mediterranean, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Middle East correspondent Ariel Osran has more on that.
An unusual plan to tackle a serious threat. The Wall Street Journal reported late Monday that Israel finished assembling a system of large pumps to flood Hamas's vast underground tunnel network with seawater. According to the report, the IDF set up 5 large water pumps near the Shati camp in northern Gaza, capable of flooding the terror tunnels under the strip.
When we talk about the tunnel system, we have to understand that there are 2 aspects to it. There's the vertical aspect, which is the shafts, of which there are hundreds and hundreds. 800 have already been found, 500 have been destroyed. And they present a tactical threat to any Israeli forces operating in Gaza. But there's the other aspect of it, and that's the 500 kilometers of underground tunnels. I call that the horizontal part of it, which not only are networked under the cities, but connect the cities to each other.
The goal of the weeks-long process would be to gradually flush out Hamas terrorists and potentially hostages from the tunnels, with the aim to render them unusable.
It's one of many methods to destroy the tunnels, and it's a great important to the Israeli military to destroy the tunnels, because this is the way that the Hamas is trying to survive this war, and afterward, of course, to claim that he is victorious.
In other words, the destruction caused by the IDF above ground would force the international community to impose a ceasefire, with Hamas protected from Israeli strikes. Israel reportedly informed the U.S. of the option early last month, prompting a discussion in Washington regarding its costs and benefits.
There are 2 downsides that one is for sure, and the other one is a we don't know. The one for sure is damaging the aquifer under Gaza. In other words, there's an environmental question here that has to come into play. But even leaving that aside, the substrate of Gaza is sand, as you can see in what you're showing on the screen right now. Sand absorbs water, and it's not clear at all whether these tunnels will actually flood, even with massive amounts of water being pumped into them. They may get a foot or 2 of water, on the ground, but will they actually flood to the point where they can't be used is an open question.
The idea of flooding tunnels in Gaza is not new. Back in 2015, Egypt flooded hundreds of underground tunnels between Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula, used for smuggling and by Islamist groups.
The Egyptians destroyed everything within 20 days. The flooding of the tunnels caused them more damage than 50 days of Israeli airstrikes. All the tunnels have collapsed.
While some of the hundreds of tunnels did survive the flooding, the benefit of such a strategy seemed clear. Now the question is whether the leaked information is intended to only frighten Hamas, or is indeed Israel's next move in its campaign to uproot Hamas from beneath the ground.
With us now is Achia Klein, a former officer at the IDF Special Engineering Unit. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It was discussed before, flooding the tunnels. Is this a viable option?
I think the idea of flooding the tunnel is to use nature force in order to get the tunnels or the whole system, the whole metro system, to be unstable, to stay there, and to force Hamas, the terrorists, to go outside. And they create the tunnel network in order to be kind of their protected, to be their shield, to hide when the Israeli force will go inside. But now, by floating the tunnels, we are creating this area very, very unstable to stay there.
But there's a danger that hostages are still inside tunnels.
Yeah, I think when the IDF took this solution, consider this solution, it's also, everything is taking in consider. I mean, by using the Air Force from the air, bombing the whole area, there also can be very challenging and can be hurt the hostages. But I think floating the tunnel, it can create a lot of damage with putting if there is a hostages inside this tunnel, it was less dangerous than doing different stuff.
And even if you do flood the tunnels, does that mean they go out of commission?
I mean, nothing is guaranteed. As I say, for many years, the underground world is very, very unknown, and we don't know what exactly Hamas did there for 10 years. I mean, we just now discover a lot of stuff they did, as the example that we saw under Shifa Hospital with the door, with the shooter, area. So yeah, we're doing whatever we can do in order to dismantle the tunnel, and also understanding the challenging of maybe there are hostages inside,
Right. Achia Klein, thank you very much for that. Back to you, Shiri, here in the studio. IDF Chief of Staff Herzia Levy said that this is one of the options, and he was talking about circling the city of Khan Yunis and targeting the heads of Hamas over there, assuming they are there.
Yeah. So there are a few points to consider here. First of all, the whole issue of tunnels, it's since there are wars. It's a very old custom in war. And we've seen a lot of experience with the Americans dealing with Daesh, ISIS in Iraq. They basically, by the way, learned from Hamas in 2014, and then Hamas learned from Daesh and ISIS and what they did with their tunnels in Iraq and other places north of Syria, and then perfected what it did. Now, using seawater, it has to be very high pressure in order to collapse the tunnels, and we don't know how long it will stretch for 500 kilometers. So, but there are a few dangers other than the hostages. One is the aquifer of that goes beneath the seawater, drinking water, and it may collapse and then collapse entire buildings with them, and they won't be able to control it as we do with the explosives. There's a lot of challenges, and we don't know exactly what they will do. It's the first time they will use it, so it's a very tricky thing. But having said that, we have to remember that the IDF in the north of Gaza is already taking control of the territory and the tunnels, so it was able to experiment with the tunnels and what it will do. So hopefully that experience will be very, very useful when it comes to Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza as we move forward.
Yeah, and Israel is determined to finish off these tunnels as much as possible.
I just want to say in a broader sense, what the tunnels are supposed to do, we have an asymmetrical war with Hamas, right? The IDF is much more powerful than Hamas. So they go underground ground to try to build that symmetry, and the IDF is trying to get them out to bring back the asymmetry because it knows it will defeat them, more likely to defeat them in battle, in face-to-face battles that we've seen few of. We see them, and also the threat to the IDF forces is 360 degrees right now. It comes from above, from the drones, it could come from underground, from sides, from buildings. So we're trying kind of to narrow the scope of the angles that are in threat for the IDF soldiers.
Right.
So trying in a broader sense to bring back that asymmetry and the advantages IDF has on Hamas.
Right. This tactic of water that basically would aim to force them to get out of the tunnels more than anything, even before destroying the tunnels, just have the Hamas people getting out of there to the surface.
And then you can have a face-to-face battle, and then the assumption is that, we will suffer losses, but in most cases we will, and evidence show, we will defeat them and beat them and kill them. The IDF is better in fighting face-to-face battles with them.
Right. Meanwhile, the fighting is intensifying in and around Khan Yunis, which is a very dense area. Still many civilians around, and a lot of bombardments and fighting there. And the question Israelis are asking themselves is, how long will we be able to do this?
We don't have the answer to that. I mean, it is evident, it's very clear that the IDF is doing a much faster job than it did in the north of Gaza. It's almost looked like he's in a hurry to get as many advantages as possible. Look, I would like to say, I think we do have leverage here with the timing. First of all, Hamas broke the ceasefire. Second, the holidays are coming up soon from international arena perspective. Come the 14th, 20th of December, people will be off for the holidays, and then the world attention will be away from the fighting, and that's not in Hamas's advantage at all, because it's the public battle and the public perception is one of the key arenas for him. There are many arenas. There's the legal arena, there's the media arena, the fighting arena, the political and diplomacy arena. So all in these arenas, we might get a leverage and advantage on, and that's could help us free the hostages and win the war.
Right. Let's go to Kibbutz Nahal Oz. This is one of the places which were most severely damaged on October the 7th. Our correspondent Yuri Shapira takes us there.
October 7th caught the entire country by surprise. In Kibbutz Nahal Oz, one of the places closest to the Gaza border, the surprise was even bigger.
We woke up around 6 a.m. My partner told me that there is a red alert. I wasn't very excited about it. I said, okay, we've experienced these situations, we'll walk it out. So we entered the safe room. The first message I got was from a friend who texted me that his wife was injured. Eventually, she died from her wounds. The door was closed, but I suppose that it wouldn't matter to them. I guess that they realized that we are old people, there is not much to do with us. So they went to other places.
Yechiel Chelnov is one of the founders of Nahal Oz. He is close to his 90s, but still very active.
When we established the kibbutz, we concentrated on agriculture. And indeed, we had very good agriculture. We have one of the best dairy industries. At least it was until the war. But it is still working. It's the first time I'm leaving the kibbutz. We had security issues when we evacuated young families with the kids, or whoever wanted to go, but never like this.
Kibbutz Nahal Oz was the first Nahal settlement, a collective community of veterans of the IDF's Nahal Brigade who combined military service and building communities across the country. In the early days, the kibbutz was considered one of the most famous in Israel, as leaders and officials visited it. One of the most famous incidents occurred in 1956 when a member of the kibbutz, Roy Rothenberg, was brutally killed by Egyptian forces. The eulogy of Moshe Dayan, then chief of staff, became one of the most iconic speeches in the history of Israel.
Early yesterday morning, Roee was murdered. The quiet of the spring morning dazzled him, and he did not see those waiting in ambush for him at the edge of the furrow. Let us not cast the blame on the murderers today. Why should we declare their burning hatred for us? For 8 years, they have been sitting in the refugee camps in Gaza, and before their eyes, we have been transforming the lands and the villages where they and their fathers dwelt into our state. It is not among the Arabs in Gaza, but in our own midst that we must seek Roee's blood. How did we shut our eyes and refuse to look squarely at our fate and see, in all its brutality, the destiny of our generation?
In 2014, another traumatic event happened when 4-year-old Daniel Tragman died from a missile sent from Gaza. The kibbutz was about to celebrate 70 years since its founding with a special ceremony. Ironically, the main show was a play which shows 2 women spotters who were cut off from their cameras.
We were supposed to have a big celebration marking 70 years of the kibbutz. On Friday, we had rehearsals for the show. The plot where the spotters are disconnected, it seems like a crazy story for me, but this is what happened eventually.
Around 35 people were murdered in Nachal Oz on October 7th. Today, residents of the kibbutz are staying in another kibbutz in the north, Mishmar HaEmek, and are waiting to decide on their next step as Nachal Oz remains a closed military zone.
Now we'll take a short break and we'll be right back with more special coverage here on I-24 News. Stay with us.